I'm Jay Farner, CEO of Quicken Loans, America's premier home purchase lender. We've created a new way to protect you from unpredictable interest rates. Our exclusive Rate Shield approval. First, we lock your interest rate for up to 90 days. Then, if rates go up, your rate stays locked. But if rates go down, your rate drops. Either way, you win. Call us today at 800-QUICKEN or go to rocketmortgage.com.
Rate Shield approval only valid on certain 30-year fixed-rate loans. Call for cost information and conditions. Equal housing lender. Licensed in all 50 states. NMLS number 3030. Additional conditions or exclusions may apply.
Blog Talk Radio.
Howdy, folks. How you doing? I hope you are doing well. And because the New York Giants or the Jets weren't in that game they call the Super Bowl, that's all I'm going to say about it. I hope you're doing well. I am doing great myself, considering the rain, the snow, and all that comes with this weather. But I'm glad to have you with us here for another show. And, of course, we have another great guest. We love speaking to leaders, legends, and trailblazers in the world of Harlem, and we have another today. But before we get started, hit us up at twitter.com/HWMag. Also on Facebook at Harlem World Magazine and at HWMag, where on the HWMag page I host it. And then you can go to our website, of course, at harlemworldmagazine.com. And if you want us anywhere on any platform, all you have to do is put in Harlem World Magazine, and you'll probably find us. And if you don't find us, there'll be a link where you can find us. And just about don't forget to like us, share this podcast. You can contact us. Also, if you'd like to sponsor the show, don't hesitate, again, to hit us up at harlemworldinfo@yahoo.com. And the best part, my favorite part of the show, is speaking to some of the incredible guests that we have. And I didn't ask her ahead of time, so I'm going to take a plunge here on her last name, and hopefully she speaks to me again afterwards if I get it wrong. It's Wendy Hilliard, Hilliard, born in Detroit, Michigan, is a Gymnastics Hall of Fame member. That's right, and the first African-American woman. Was the first African-American rhythmic gymnast to compete as a member of the U.S. national team. Wendy was the first African-American to represent the United States in rhythmic gymnastics in an international competition, including 3 world championships. I said 3, 1979, 1981, 1983. Wendy's no joke. Wendy coached an Olympian in 1996. She was the first African-American president of the Women's Sports Foundation from 1995 to 1996, and was also an Olympic sportscaster and Broadway performer. She could obviously show me a few techniques. She was also the director of sports for the New York City 2012 Olympic bid. In 2096, Wendy founded the Wendy Hilliard Gymnastics Foundation, which has provided free and low-cost gymnastics for over 15,000 urban youth in Harlem, New York, and beyond. And in the fall of 2016, she expanded her gymnastics program to Detroit, her hometown. And this month, she returns to the renovated space, renovated by the city, this year, obviously, in 2019. Thank you, Wendy, for being here. How are you?
I'm great. So glad to be here. Just one point. We started the foundation in 1996. I think that's what you said. Not sure, but we've been going for over 20 years. So
yes.
Right. Okay, great. Glad to be here.
Fantastic. You are doing some really great work, and 3 world championships. That's no small feat. Congrats to you for all the work. And I know being a gymnast, well, I don't know, but from what I hear, being a gymnast, it really takes some really hard work, focus, and dedication. Congrats to you for what you've done for the country, too.
Thank you very much.
So, Wendy, I want to get right into it. What has it been your mother who has been your number one inspiration in doing and starting the foundation, or were you inspired by someone or something else?
That's a very interesting question. So I was inspired mainly because it's kind of one thing. So my gymnast who I coached the Olympics, Allianne Batgirl-Wilson, her mom had told me, she says, Wendy, this sport is so expensive, it's this and that. And it just made me think. At the time, I was coaching elite athletes. So at that, when you coach elite athletes, you can usually maybe 10 or so gymnasts. And after I had retired, I realized, there weren't many more minorities or African Americans in the sport, and it was getting more and more expensive. So that really inspired me to start the foundation and leave the elite level of gymnastics as a coach and to go back to grassroots. And then I would say that my term as the president of the Women's Sports Foundation, it kind of highlighted how girls still needed so much more support in sports. It was a really tough time. We've come a long way, and Title IX's done incredible things, but it's still a challenge. And so I think those things together really inspired me to start the foundation. And and then I just had a lot of support from a lot of great people because I really just jumped in. That's
fantastic. And, I played sports for a number of years, and it was the lifeline that got me out of, let's just say, the urban community I was raised in. And, it's not a question that I planned on asking you, but when you said that you coached elite athletes, and I, something came to mind, and that was, what is it, Wendy, that made you the athlete that you were and probably still are, and what is it in those athletes that you trained that, you have to have it? Can you put just one thing that's, is it the determination? Is it that willingness to never give up? Is there, one of those things that, they have to have it? And I know Tom Brady has it. Is there one thing that you could put your finger on, Wendy?
You really mentioned it. It is something that I think is innate, and you have to have that internal drive that this is really what you want to do. And because it takes a lot of sacrifice, a lot of people say no, it takes a lot of hard work.
Right.
And it's something I've always asked people, it's not something that somebody else can kind of push you along to do, because in the end you have to do the work. It is having the drive to and the willingness to put in the work and the sacrifice and the passion. And that's what elite athletes have, because it really just takes so much work, and that there's no other way around it.
And there's no you can't go to I'm not going to say a store's name. You can't just go to a store and buy passion and focus and determination and all those things. So is it something that you're just born with, or it develops over time, or can you develop it?
Oh, that's a really good question. So usually you can develop it, and sometimes it strikes people differently. My whole thing, especially about starting their foundation, is to expose kids to it. Like, you never know what your passion is going to be. It could be gymnastics, it could be softball, it could be basketball, something like that, or it could be dance or music. But the first thing is you have to be exposed to different things, to what catches your eye, right? So if you're in a situation where you're in an environment where you're able to express your passion. That's the other part of it, is that people that even Tom Brady, all these top athletes around the world, Simone Biles, they have a platform now that feeds their passion. And so they found that, and it's not, you can develop it to a certain extent. You can develop it if you have the right environment for it to work. You have good coaches, you have the ability to train, all those types of things will help. But usually, often more than, I would say 90% of the time, it is the individual's passion that drives that excellence.
Yeah, and I love when I see that passion. When I'm not doing publishing gig, I'm an educator, and I always loved the college level. And now, I had this experience with, middle school kids, and I'm like, they're at an early moment in their lives where they seem to be more open. And when I see that passion in them, I can see it in their eyes. I just love feeding them the love and the encouragement to move them forward. So I just wanted to just add that real quickly. I think I love that kind of conversation, and especially with youth who, for me, it's always limitless of what they can do, especially if they make their minds up. Wendy, people always have challenges in lives, and they're looking for to find the strength for the next challenge, like you've done in renovating the space in your hometown of Detroit. What has made you want to do that? Because some people can, do their thing in Los Angeles. If they're from, Detroit, they can do their thing in New York and stay in New York. Why did you decide to kind of complete the circle, let's say, and, come back home to Detroit and do the work that you're doing?
Well, that's a good question. So I thought about it a little bit just because Detroit was going through such challenges, and I love my city. I love Detroit. I love my hometown, and people from Detroit are very passionate about where they're from.
That's right.
But I will say that a few years ago, they started this program. Crane's Publishing in Detroit started this program called Detroit Homecoming, where they invited, they call us expats, people that are successful in other parts of the country. They bring them home to Detroit for 3 days, and it's almost like they show them the city and show what opportunities are there and things like that.
Wow.
And everybody coming together to inspire them to invest in Detroit. So when I went to the first one, I was really inspired to invest in the city in a way that a lot of people hadn't done, and that's really invest in the kids that were still there, right? A lot of people were bringing some really interesting businesses and, sports complexes, downtown Detroit, all these really great things, but it wasn't necessarily for the kids that were still in Detroit. And I thought the one way I could give back, because it made such a profound impact on my life, was to bring my Gymnastics Foundation back to the city, and that's really what inspired me.
I'm just in heaven here, Wendy, because I just love this conversation and the fact too that, more importantly, I guess one could say, that you're giving back, and it seems like such an easy thing, but it isn't, because you don't have to. You could do what you want, where you want to do it, and it's your choices that you make. And on the dates of the is it a reopening that you're calling it? When does that new space open in Detroit? I think you're in Detroit now, correct?
We are. So we've actually had programs in Detroit since 2016. I was really gung-ho on starting some type of gymnastics program by the Olympics, after the Olympic Games. And I knew that Simone Biles and the whole team would be really inspiring, so that's when I started. What's really exciting now is that in January, we were invited to come to the Kemeny Recreation Center. So the Kemeny Recreation Center, through the Detroit Recreation Department, is a very old recreation center in the southwest part of Detroit, and they did millions of dollars of renovations. And so the city called and said, well, Wendy, would you like to bring gymnastics there? And that's all they had to do. I'm like, I'm there. You're giving us space.
What?
We'll get the equipment. Yeah. Now, at one point you said it is not easy. It's not easy what we do, but it's very rewarding. But what it was so excited about this is that when I trained in Detroit, so the story goes, you said how we started, is that I was, there wasn't a lot of gymnastics when I was growing up in Detroit. We had to go out to the suburbs, which my mother didn't like very much, because she was a big proponent about staying in the city and having activities in the city. So
go ahead,
she
Mom.
She was definitely a trailblazer. So she talked to the head of the recreation department, Leon Atchison, and asked him to hire these coaches that were training. I was training out in the Jewish Community Center out in the suburbs. And so he says, okay, I'll hire them, so they'll become City of Detroit employees and work at our recreation department. So all of a sudden, when they did that, we had these 4 coaches, 2 more came. They were from Ukraine. They were Soviet trained. They were like, no joke. And all of a sudden, seriously, about 3 years after that, the Detroit team became nationally known for this training, because what it was is that we could all take gymnastics, not because of how much we could pay, not because it was really far, your parents would drive you. It was at a community center in our neighborhood, and you were able to get the best training from some of the best coaches, and we were all dedicated. And so when I saw that formula and what it can do for a community, I did that in Harlem, and when we wanted to take it back to Detroit, that's what I did. And what's so excited about the new opening or being at the community center is that we're back in the recreation department where I had my training. So that's what's so exciting about this.
You truly are completing a circle, and I just want our listeners to know that they're listening to the Danny Tisdale Show on Harlem World Radio, and I am Danny Tisdale, and I got another great guest. And also, before I go right back to our guest, don't forget to reach out to us if you want to sponsor the show and tell your Harlem story on our podcast. And we are speaking to Wendy Hilliard, who is founder of Wendy Hilliard Gymnastics Foundation. And without further ado, Wendy, do you ever have those days, Wendy, when you are with some of the young folks that you work with, or you're looking at the Olympics, or you're looking at some Olympic trials, I guess, or gymnastic trials, and say, wow, you know what, I wish I could just do one more Olympics? Do you ever have those days, or it's like, no, never?
No, never.
Okay.
Because, here's the thing about training.
Just asking.
And that's, because what happens is that's why when I was an elite coach, so, I was 10 years on a national team. So that's, 10, 11 years of practicing 6 hours a day, 5 to 6 days a week, right? And then
no joke.
when you're a coach, you have to be in the gym just like you were when you're a gymnast, because you have to coach your athletes 5, 6 days a week, 6 hours a day. It's very intense. And
let alone the prep that you have to do, right?
Yes. There's so many things that go around it.
I mean, you don't even probably count the hours when it comes to prep. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, the preparation, you just have to sleep. I mean, when you're an elite athlete, your body is your tool, and you have to eat right, and you have to sleep right, and you still have to go to school and still manage to take care of yourself.
Right.
It's all consuming, but when I look now at gymnastics on TV, even when I see the kids in my program perform or watch the Olympic Games, and I do go to Olympics. I've been to every summer games since '84. I am totally inspired to see what the athletes can do. But what gives me more joy is to provide opportunities for other people to learn gymnastics. That really brings joy to me.
So you never have those moments where I'm coming out of retirement. I don't care what year it is. I'm going to do this again. No, that never happens.
Cannot. I've got, 2 kids that I'm raising. And,
okay.
There's too much going on. It's interesting. I'm so far removed from it, and I had a very long career, and I enjoyed a lot, but I just, it's not just trying to come out and do training. You'd have to just turn your life upside down. I mean,
upside down, right. Along with
I
everybody else's life who's connected to your life, I imagine.
Exactly. It's a little bit easier to do when you don't have, kids and job and bills and everything else.
Responsibilities, right.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and I hear you, and of course that makes complete sense, but, another way of, asking the question, well, not asking that question, but, there's somebody listening who either has a son or a daughter and probably says, I would like my son or daughter to be the next, Wendy. What advice do you have for someone who wants to, have their son or daughter or have themselves follow, in your footsteps in giving back to the community? Because I know it's a huge investment, and you could either take on giving back to the community or just, being an elite athlete. You could pick out of those two which one you want to answer.
Well, I would say, let's say giving back to the community, and you ask a really important question, and I'm going back to when you talked about being an educator and how that impacts, and when you reach younger kids, how fulfilling it is. My mom was an educator. I think people need to understand how important that is, what you're doing with young people to expose them, and I think educators have a different sense of looking at it maybe different than a parent. This is, when you have a teacher in a classroom and you have one child that's doing really well and there's one child that's taking slow, everything is a process, right? You have a curriculum, there's a way that you do it. And so the one thing I would say to parents is that treat your child being in sports like a part of their education, because from my standpoint, it is extremely important part of education. You have to teach kids how to be healthy, especially in this day and age where kids, are around video so much, they're not moving as much, they're not eating good food. Being able to understand your physicality when you're young is very important for girls, because let me tell you, girls need to be staying in sports, especially when they hit 13, 14, 15 years old. They need to be doing sports. But anyway.
No, I know. That's a whole nother show. Most definitely,
that's another show. Another show. But the thing is that with parents, so let's say if you want your child to be a great athlete or something like that, it's good. You have to expose them to the different sports that they like. You may like gymnastics. They may like, swimming. And at one point, you got to come together to what the child likes to do. But the inspiration and really helping the community is exposing your child to different sports, supporting them as they go, and this is a very fine line. There is support, but parents tend to get very excited when it comes to sports, and they, for some reason, think they have all this background and they can know what to do. But the coaches pretty much, you got to take your cue from them. Right? If you're a coach in gymnastics, especially in gymnastics, you probably did gymnastics for like 10 or 15 years, and you've been coaching for, you've got a good 20 years behind you, and you could be 20 years old. So the thing is that the community part is really important, because the Wendy Hilliard Gymnastics Foundation, we are a community. We're very excited. February 22nd, 23rd, 24th, we host our Harlem Invitational. So exciting. We're very exciting. And what it does is that we have over 1,000 athletes that are coming from the tri-state area, and some coming from Florida and some other places. But it's all free. We have a partnership with the Harlem Children's Zone, and we're in the Harlem Armory for 3 days, 1,000 athletes, all these people. So we have our parents, our team parents, because we have 50 team parents. They all volunteer their time to make this a really rewarding opportunity so kids can see gymnastics for free, right? They can see it. They can be a part of it, but the community part, I will have to say, in all sports and most successful, community organizations, it does take a village. It takes a village to make this work. I don't do it by myself. I have a great board of directors. I have a great administrative staff. I have great coaches and great parents that support their kids. And when we all work together is when you're able to have an organization that can serve over 15,000 kids. It really does. I think people need to look at it not just as their child, but to look at also keeping the community strong. And we're, in Beat in Harlem, we are really specific about what we do. These are the kids we serve, and this is the community that we serve. And us working together will keep us strong.
Well, Wendy, I'm loving it, every single word that you're saying, and I just want to give a thumbs up to sports in general, especially team sports, because, again, it helped change my life, and I know with team sports it helps changes everyone's life, and sports in general. So I'm just doing a free ad for sports here and throwing it out there. And Wendy, as I kind of prepped you, as we talked earlier, not that I prepped you, but, I wanted to ask you, if my memory serves me correct, in 2020 is the Olympics in Japan. Okay, Wendy, how are we going to do? Are we taking this all the way in 2020, or hard to say right now, it's too early?
Well, in sport, anything can happen at any day. But I would say this much. If Simone Biles is still healthy and on her way, then we have a really great shot. Simone Biles is a incredible athlete. I don't think people realize. She's been great for the last 4 or 5 years, and she's won all these world championships and the Olympics.
Crazy.
And she's really, she steps ahead of everyone. So she's one of those athletes that comes along like a Michael Jordan, like a Michael Phelps, like people that are just so above in their sport. So with her along the way, and I have to say the rest of the U.S. team on the women's side most likely are going to do quite well. It's really hard to touch us. But Understanding gymnastics, instead of 5 athletes on the team, there are going to be 4. And what they're doing now is trying to give more opportunity to the rest of the world, because we are very deep in the U.S. as far as women's gymnastics is concerned, as far as being very strong. So I assume, especially if we're going along, that we will do very well if everybody's healthy. On the men's side, they're coming up. They're doing as well as they can. So, gymnastics has in the Olympics 4 different disciplines. There's women's gymnastics, men's gymnastics, rhythmic gymnastics, and trampoline. So women's gymnastics, no doubt, gets a lot of attention. They're winning like crazy. But women's gymnastics are going to be, I think they'll be fine. Everyone stays healthy.
I completely agree. And I just wanted to also say that when we look at other sports, whenever I see this on TV, these are the kind of things that go through my mind. I see horseback riding, equestrian, rock climbing, motocross, skateboarding, hockey in some ways is happening. But these are all sports that as soon as we start having more and more people of color, diverse gender playing the sport, it will grow, and there will be a renaissance like we're having this renaissance that I'm putting on your shoulders that you started in the Olympics. And, I really look forward to that. It's just exciting time to be in, especially when it wasn't this Super Bowl Sunday that I noticed, but I think it was maybe earlier in the season that we had our first female referee, and I do like the fact that they didn't brag about it and they just put the camera on her, said her name, and gave her props. But it just seems like it's taken forever for that to happen. And I know I'm going off on a little tangent here, but I just wanted to mention that also. But, as the clock ticks, Wendy, please give our listeners, information where they can stay in contact with the work that you're doing, maybe donate to, the foundation. Can you give our listeners that information so they can stay connected to the great work you're doing?
Oh, for sure. Thank you for asking. Well, wendyhilliard.org is our website, and you can donate there. You can follow us on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, and you can, I think, giving back, and you can see what it does for the young people. Most of our kids, 90% of our team members, and anyone who comes to our program, we really make it work for them. We're able to raise money. Our funders have been great. So we have very affordable gymnastics. But if you can't do that, we give scholarships. So what we need is the community to, surprisingly, you can donate, $50 a month or $50 at all, and it'll give 1 month of gymnastics to a deserving kid. You'd be surprised, and I think people really want to look at the investment of what we're doing for these kids.
Right.
They may not become Olympic champions, but what they are going to become is they're going to become healthy, and they're going to become focused. And even if they don't want to do gymnastics, they're going to be able to concentrate really hard and understand the importance of work. That's what I keep telling people. Why I have all these kids doing all this gymnastics is because that's what I teach. That's what we give. But what we're really giving them is a platform to express themselves, but also to learn lifelong lessons. So if you can invest through us on our website, as I mentioned, wendyhilliard.org, or Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, I do invite you to do that one. It'll be well worth it.
Yeah, and that's great stuff. And we were talking earlier in the week about the program, and we kept coming back to the fact that like you said, that if gymnastics is not the thing for you after you're in the program, you at least can get a gold medal in life for doing the best that you can do at the job that you're working in. It may not be in gymnastics, but whatever you're doing, almost like, Martin said, is that you can, as long as you're the best at whatever job you do, that's what's important. And you're giving them the opportunity to win gold medals in whatever they choose in their life. And I think that's fantastic. And you can't replace that in any way. But, our last question, and this is another surprise for you, Wendy, what's your one favorite place in Harlem? Do you have one? I know you probably have many, but is there one favorite place that you have?
Wow, now that's a really zinger because I spend so much time here. That is a good question. So besides where my program is at the Harlem Armory, because I really love seeing the kids do what they do. I do like going over to Riverbank. I love going over to the West Side. I'm an outdoorsy kind of person. So when you're on there and you're on the Hudson River and you're at the park, it's really a wonderful place to be in Harlem. And so that's one of my. There are many, but anything outside that celebrates our beautiful community is where I like to be.
Thank you, Wendy. I appreciate it, and good luck with your work that you're doing in Detroit, and of course, especially in Harlem. Thank you much. Love what you do.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
I'm Jay Farner, CEO of Quicken Loans, America's premier home purchase lender. We've created a new way to protect you from unpredictable interest rates. Our exclusive Rate Shield approval. First, we lock your interest rate for up to 90 days. Then, if rates go up, your rate stays locked. But if rates go down, your rate drops. Either way, you win. Call us today at 800-QUICKEN or go to rocketmortgage.com.
Rate Shield approval only valid on certain 30-year fixed-rate loans. Call for cost information and conditions. Equal housing lender. Licensed in all 50 states. NMLS number 3030. Additional conditions or exclusions may apply.